going to expand on kind of how the nature park process works beyond just what is the nature park. But just really quickly, for anyone who wasn't able to make it at our previous one, I'll just go over some highlighted points about the program. If it'll let me. There we go. So just one key thing is to say that we're fully funded by the Department of Education, and we were kind of born out of their sustainability strategy, alongside these other programs here. So Climate Ambassadors, Let's Go Zero, and Sustainability for Support and Education. So if you haven't heard about those programs, just get in contact with either myself, or I'm sure Louisa's got their information as well. But we kind of work in tandem to help schools become more sustainable and to kind of incorporate sustainability into their climate action plans, and in particular, which is my passion and my focus, how this can feed into the curriculum. So quickly for the nature park, like I said, we're fully funded. So that means for schools, we are completely free. So all of our resources online are free to access. Once you register, it'll kind of go through the different processes with you and guide you through it with the dashboard. But if you're wanting to get in contact with myself or Lewis, who is my counterpart within the East of England, we are available, and our support for schools is free as well. The main aims of the program is really to look at biodiversity gain from a community science aspect in particular. So we're led by the Natural History Museum, and they take all this research, all this data that schools are helping us collect. And this year, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be publishing our first research paper about what schools are having an impact on, and kind of what we're doing, and how we're promoting and improving biodiversity. We have lots and lots of curriculum linked resources, which I will have a chance to go over in a bit. But just to say that we have quite a rigorous quality control. So it goes through almost too rigorous a process, just to make sure that all of our resources are fully curriculum aligned, and have the vocabulary, have all those elements that mean you can pick up and go with those resources. A key part of the program is this incorporation of digital skills. So looking at how you can use certain industry standard devices or programs such as GIS, if anyone's heard of that, through Esri, and getting students to kind of get taster versions and build their skills slowly in those products, so that when they go out into the industry, for example, they're fully aware of what people are using in real life, and building on those skills. And I can attain that when I went to university, we were definitely using these digital skills and tools already. So and then, of course, we've already touched on this, so I won't go too much in detail, but the improved well-being of young people, being outside and kind of learning by doing, learning by interacting and caring for your environment, has these really great co-benefits in terms of nature connection and well-being for our young people, and for staff. Let's not forget the staff as well. So what is Nature Park? It is schools themselves creating almost like a wildlife corridor, essentially. It's these pockets of sanctuaries that wildlife can use on your site, to create what is the Education Nature Park. So schools kind of creating this network, creating these places that wildlife can now prosper, essentially. And of course, seeing what schools are doing, because we don't know a lot about what is on school sites. So it's great to kind of find out where we're starting from as well. So we use this 5-step process. This is what it looks like, and it is cyclical. So when I go over everything, we're going to kind of start at the kind of step 2, because when we get to step 1 or 5, they are very similar, because you're kind of weaving back into the cycle and redoing the process, so that you can actually see and collect data about the impact, and you can evidence in particular what your schools and your young people are doing. So this is kind of what I would say my recommended route through the program would be. I'm going to talk about my two favorite resources that I believe any school could kind of pick up and use and adapt for any setting. So kind of I've done it across key stages. And I just think, yeah, my kind of cherry picked resources. And then when we get to this like making change happen element, I'll suggest some improvements that schools can kind of do to get high impact as well. So we're going to start by looking at our planner. So we're currently obviously in the summer term. We have a termly planner. We do have a couple suggestions of what you could get on with in this term. But in particular, I think for anyone joining today, that summer term is a really great starting point to kind of think of what can you achieve next year and kind of building yourself up to that. So a great option this term is maybe to look at writing a vision statement. And this is a way to get your young people involved in kind of thinking about what do they want their school to become? What do they want to see more of? What would they like to do and use and hear and all those different things, and getting their kind of that pupil voice into it. Once you've created your vision statement, and these questions and there's different like PowerPoint links and stuff for doing this activity, so I won't go into too much detail. But once you've kind of gone through this process with your young people and they've created that vision statement, that can then go through into next year. And that can be like where you kind of target your energy potentially for the next year. So on the website, we have kind of like some sentence starters if you're curious. But I also just wanted to highlight a local school in Felixstowe and their vision statements and what they created using this resource. And it's really, really guided their outdoor learning quite a lot. I'm actually going to go see them next week, which will be great to kind of see where they are with their vision statement. But I just wanted to kind of pick up on what you could do after this as well. So ideas for improvement, I'm very biased towards this. This is probably my favorite resource out of everything on our website that I've used. But it kind of goes through what problems you might have on your site and what nature-based solutions you can then use to mitigate those. So this is just a snippet from the PowerPoint that is already on the website, but it kind of addresses things like this. So for example, noise and air pollution, and they've got a really busy main road along your school. So this is kind of something that Cornelius looked at when they were creating their what they wanted to change on their site through their vision statement. And they wanted these spaces where students kind of felt that they could relax and play within nature and not feeling like essentially they had a busy road next to them. And so they looked at these ideas for improvements cards. So these are a top trump style card, which is perfect because I don't think I've met a young person that doesn't know how to play this game. And they can kind of pick up these cards and run with the session. So once you've created your vision statement, you kind of have an aim of what you're wanting to do. You can then pose the issue of, we want to cancel out noise pollution. What could we do to do that? So they have these different examples. They've obviously got the classic top trumps rating system, but most importantly, I think, is that they've got this ranking system here that talks about impact, whether it's instant within 1 year or even more long term, and kind of what would the cost be of doing that. So students can start thinking about like the feasibility of their ideas and not just this blue sky thinking. These are downloadable and you can print them off yourself and kind of create your own deck of ideas for improvements cards. And then if for any younger years, there is a Planning Our Green Future version, which is kind of just the images that they can start using to get ideas for. So those two kind of go hand in hand as kind of your starting point. That's something you can do this term. But if you're wanting to get out and really find out what your school is has and is doing. I call this creating your baseline. Okay. So there's two types of baseline that your school can find out through our program. And that is doing the classic habitat mapping, which was brought up on, my route picture. And that is looking at what habitats you have. And then once you've kind of done that with your young people, you can see that they're doing this in that photo there. You can then look at the suite of nature surveys that we have. So if your school's thinking of possibly doing like a BioBlitz, for example, we have a pollinator count, a grassland survey, and a project on iNaturalist and guides on how to use these different resources on our website. And that kind of says, what habitats do we have? What wildlife is it supporting? Then you can go ahead and make the change and come back to this step. Okay, we've now got this habitat. What wildlife is it supporting? And you can kind of see the transition of your change, such as in this result over here. So obviously a very drastic change. They're not always this big, but we call this kind of a grey to green. So space that has no nature. And then, of course, putting the nature there and finding out what changes has that created, what impact does it have. I've just dropped down in the bottom here a couple of the curriculum links. One that I think is quite important is this working scientifically. So if we've got any geography teachers or biology science teachers that are trying to think of a way to do that fieldwork element of their curriculum, the nature surveys are a really great way to do that. The pollinator count in particular goes through quite a good scientific kind of way, like I would have done this at university, is doing a habitat survey exactly the same way. So it lays it out quite well. My suggestions for your school might be, I think my top one is probably, maybe this isn't my top one, but maybe the most accessible one for school is creating a wildflower patch. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to section off a space of your school to create this. I've seen really successful wildflower areas that are borders of a school. One that I love in particular is having it around like a football pitch or, the playing field, because you obviously need a very specific space to play football, for example, but all the outer edges aren't necessarily used. So it kind of becomes dead space and you can use that dead space for that. Making a log pile. If you've got any sticks, doesn't have to be you cut down a tree and you create logs. If you've got anything there that you can pile into a corner and shove leaves and everything around, then that's a really great, affordable option. But equally, if you're wanting kind of something that is a bit more engaging for the young people to have a look at, putting down like a piece of corrugated metal or plastic is a great way, because they can kind of easily lift that up to see what is accumulating underneath that, and they can kind of engage with the mini beasts that come to their site. My favorite is a container pond. I think this probably has the highest impact in terms of biodiversity and putting it onto your, especially if you don't have a pond or any sort of water feature on your site. This really boosts your biodiversity almost instantly, in the sense of you didn't have that habitat and now you do. But container ponds in particular, I get a lot of schools that say we can't have a pond for safety reasons. So having kind of a smaller feature that still attracts different wildlife. And it might not attract frogs and newts and those really amphibians, like those larger species, but it will definitely do things like hoverflies and different insects that kind of need that space and are in decline, and are really great for pond dipping as well. So that's kind of my favorite choice there. And I just wanted to signpost to the Wild About Gardens document. So these are booklets. Currently this year, it is the Year of the Moth. And in the booklets, it has ways to create habitat for those species. And it will have an activity at the end that you can do with your young people to kind of engage them with that wildlife. But they also store previous year's booklets at the bottom of the page. So if there's a particular species that you're wanting to encourage and you want some guidance on how to do that, you can access that through the Wild About Gardens. And if you want to get in touch with me, this is our email, and you can contact me if you'd like any visits or any support through the Nature Park program. Thank you.